That was really when I was 19 was the first time that I remembered seeing these beings when I was a kid. There's nowhere that was safe, that no matter where I went or what I did, that they could find me. And that nobody could help me. Nobody could stop it.
Welcome everyone to Cosmic Convergence, an experiencer-hosted podcast. Join us as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Today, we are joined with my two fellow co-hosts, Christian and Jonathan, and it's been a minute since we've talked to everyone, so thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to be back, and it's great to have both of you fine gentlemen, my brothers here. And we're wanting to talk about, today we don't have any guests, but we're wanting to go into some of the historical accounts from abduction cases and people that have experienced the phenomenon going back decades. And we're wanting to kind of enrich our channel by going back and reminding people that the phenomenon is all-encompassing. It's always happening to us, and it's always changing and morphing, and that the recent stuff of the whistleblowers coming out, we have different people like Jake Barber that a lot of people have talked about, of seeing different craft that they're summoning, quote unquote. This has been going on forever. So we were just wanting to remind everyone about that and continuing to talk about the phenomenon. Did anybody else want to say anything before we get into this episode?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to say is this, is that, sometimes no matter what a hobby is or work, not saying this is work, or, interests, every once in a while it's good and healthy to kind of like take a step back, analyze what we've absorbed, so for instance, the journey that we've had in the past year with Cosmic Convergence. Sometimes it's good, it's healthy, take a step back, breathe, right? Gain all digest what has been brought forward to you, disseminate between how you feel about certain things. And then, of course, with the world of disclosure and then ufology and all that stuff, there's a whole plethora of things that just are continually being thrown in our faces, right? Especially if we're like digging like way deep. And so, sometimes it's good to take a break. And I feel like we all kind of were like, all right, let's kind of assess, not really the channel, but let's assess everything that's being talked about, everything that's being claimed, all the big news, and try to see like all the angles that everything's coming from guests to what's happening, on what gets talked about on the internet and stuff like that. But what's important, and we all kind of agreed on this, and what's important is, as Daniel had mentioned, is to go back historically and look at some of the witness accounts or abductee accounts from like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, earlier, before there really was this internet, hype, podcasting, stuff like that. To where, heck, you might see a clip on the news, your local news, or you might see a documentary that would come out every once in a blue moon about the subject. And it was kind of really more underground than what it is today. It's still underground, but it wasn't so in your face. And why we kind of chose this clip, I think personally, is because of the deep psychological impact that this woman had through her experiences, whether good or bad. But when I saw it before, it really hit me deep and hit me hard, and it's still a lot to consider. So that's all I have to say about this. And I hope that people come away with this podcast with the same feeling that I do as far as that goes. Christian, did you have anything you wanted to add to the phenomenon, how it affects us or impacts us?
Just ready to begin, but
Okay.
I agree with both of you guys. Honestly, it's just one of those things. Everything, including everything that's included in the past and the past experiences, is easily lost, especially now that, all this stuff is coming out, and there's still so many people that think that this is a new thing, right? And, it's just an American thing. I still see that, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God. And it isn't. And it's getting bigger and bigger now, but it's good to return to the source of stuff. Go back to the source. Let's go back in history, see what's going on before there was so much light on this. And that way to remind people this isn't a new thing. And
Yeah. And I want to just kind of comment on what your thoughts were, John, is as we're about to watch this clip with this heavy kind of abduction and encounter that this woman and her children have had. You know, as experiencers and as people who are investigative in the phenomenon, we always have to be of what the phenomenon is doing, but also what misinformation may be going on and what government might be doing, you know, private industry as well. And I think that's in part, you know, and just being honest, that genuinely has been our concern for the last while with all these kind of big people coming into the space. There was even like last week talks about, what is it, Dr. Bill getting into UFOs or different things, you know. So as it's kind of hitting this new form of mainstream, people are trying to jump on the boat. I agree. I think we all genuinely were wanting to take a step back and trying to assess where things are moving, and if we were seeing clearly, and if people are seeing clearly with it, you know, as the conversation grows. So yeah, but it's great to be back, and it's great to be talking about this. So let's get into it.
Sue's 56. She's experienced abduction since childhood. They've been very traumatic experiences for her. In the course of time, she's managed to overcome her fear, among other things by painting her visitors.
It was so scary to me when I think about it, but then when I finally was able to paint it, then it didn't seem so scary to me. His face doesn't look that scary. He almost looks like he has a look of wonderment.
But you remember precisely having seen this face? When was it?
The first abduction Sue remembers clearly occurred when she was 19. A pulsating blue light woke her as it made its way across the bedroom. Sue was in bed, terrified and unable to look at it. They're here, she thought. But who are they? Her thoughts made no sense at all. She heard her mother get up, call her, and then go back to bed. Terrified, Sue found the courage to turn around. It was then she noticed two small gray beings. Then she passed out. The next day, her mother confirmed that she did get up after hearing a noise in her daughter's room, but that some sort of a force compelled her to go back to bed. Gradually, Sue would come to realize that she'd been abducted since childhood, but simply didn't understand what was happening.
That was really, when I was 19, was the first time that I remembered seeing these beings when I was a kid. Coming into the room and then waking up and finding them standing next to your bed and being terrified. And feeling that, I remember feeling that the world was just not a safe place, that there was nowhere that was safe, that no matter where I went or what I did, that they could find me, and that nobody could help me, nobody could stop it. It was really scary. Scary way to grow up. And so as I got older, that's what bothered me so much with my kids, was knowing that they were also being visited and there was nothing I could do about it. I was just going to make some...
David, Sue's husband, manages a construction company. A nature lover, he's preparing for retirement by turning part of their land into a Christmas tree farm. David gets up at dawn every morning. He's never been abducted himself, and he lived with Sue for over 30 years.
The trees on the sides of the field are all old, a lot of them, and they're starting to fall, starting to fall on my Christmas trees and stuff. So I take them down, use them for firewood rather than letting them fall into the field.
He's such a good boy. He's such a good boy.
You have seen things yourself around here?
Not so much seeing things, but being paralyzed.
Oh yeah.
Held down, and where I can't move. It was involved with things that were going on with Sue, as near as I can tell, and I tried to get up and I'd be paralyzed. I couldn't move.
Do you remember what's happened then?
No, I never can remember anything.
Just before being paralyzed?
Just the noises or something, or she was stirring and I was trying to get up and, to see what was going on.
Might be obsessing, no?
Well, yeah, I mean, it even happened, that happens here to me too. Seems like a heavy weight is holding me down.
That's right.
Yeah, just, holding me in bed, and I can't explain it, except it's
So I want people and us as well to realize, anybody watching this, is that this is common. You know, we hear about this. You know, someone can say, well, you know, Whitley Strieber, because that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is Whitley Strieber. Well, Whitley Strieber came out with this around this time, and so these other people are mimicking what Whitley Strieber said. But, you know, Whitley Strieber, of course, was married to Anne, right? And so when he would get up to go for his walks, right, she would be paralyzed. Through hypnoregression or whatever, hypnotherapy, it would come out that she would say that, well, she knew that he was going to come back, that he had to go on his walk, essentially. I'm not trying to quote verbatim, but that she would feel like she could not get out of the bed. And this is exactly what this woman's husband is stating. Well, I haven't really had my own experiences with them, with the Greys, okay, lack of a better term,
Right.
but I'm unable to move. I feel this weight on me. And of course, a lot of people that have abduction experiences have that sleep paralysis, Chris, Daniel. We've all talked about this in the past, right? So he's saying, well, I can't recollect ever having, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have it as well, right? Because that's so common, right? That's so common. Well, not me, no, her, yeah, but not me. But then, I mean, I don't know if this episode's going to go into it, but just because he doesn't recall it doesn't mean it didn't happen to him either, right? Because, I mean, I would think that would be fairly common. That is not just going to be one of the two people, but it's actually could be both. And just to go back real quick, I mean, it's really interesting when she said that as a kid, you know, she would see these beings on the side of her bed. Again, very common. Could it have been some kind of, you know, awake, asleep, you know, kind of transition period between, you know, sleeping and awakeness, and with her awareness is still coming in? Could it be something that was like formulated through a dream and she was just coming back to quote unquote reality? Yeah, but as we'll see here later, it definitely has a bigger impact than, was I dreaming or was I awake? So guys, before we continue, any comments about any of that stuff?
Yeah. I wanted to say really quick, him not really having quote an experience, but kind of being in support of her. That is also common with a lot of experiencers that will have like a specific partner that seems to not really have a whole lot of experience, but they're like the main focus, at least that they remember. And that's a kind of a trope with experiencers. The other thing too is she said she was so-and-so age before she remembered she had experiences her whole life. This is another very common thing with experiencers. There will be like this moment where they'll realize, and then they'll look back through their life. And so, yeah, and this is, like you said, with Whitley Strieber, came out with around this time with, you know, communion and all this stuff, and it was very much in the public eye. But these type of things go back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris?
And just wanted to say that, you know, with the sleep paralysis stuff, that's exactly what it feels like. And I've had sleep paralysis where kind of almost nothing happens. And then I've had the experiences where, you know, beings are around, faces looking at me, and it's clear as day, as clear as I see you guys. So it's just like, I'm not dreaming. I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and some communication happening that way. Back in either 2024 or late 2023, that's when I had the feeling of lifting up out of the bed. Sleep paralysis, couldn't move. The way he described it is exactly what it feels like. You just, like a heavy weight, you can't move. It's like a force, an invisible force. But you have awareness, and I just felt myself lift up. And, you know, I didn't have so much of the fear. I did at first, but then I kind of like let go. I'm like, it's okay, you know, and then the fear kind of washed away, and I had good experiences. But, you know, it's different for everyone, and everyone has their own perceptions. Yeah.
All right, let's continue, guys.
After lunch, David went outside to do some work on the farm, as he liked to call it, his Christmas tree farm. Winter was setting in. David and Sue have 2 children, Danny and Jake, who are both going on 30 and no longer lived with their parents. In 1990, Sue experienced an abduction in which her 2 children were also involved. Danny was 13 and Jake 11. Night had fallen. Sue and David were woken up by a blue light and their dog, Molly, whining. The dog was downstairs, petrified. Sue got up, but David couldn't get out of bed. Sue suddenly felt as if she was being pushed towards the stairs.
As I walked down the stairs, I remember thinking, I'm going to make sure I'm looking at, this is my home. It's Sunday night, David's in bed, it's 11 o'clock, this is, these are my pictures that are on the wall, this is the color of my rug. I know that I'm awake. And I stepped into the kitchen, and Danny was standing there. He was 13. And he was standing like a robot. I mean, his hands were really down like this against his side, and his eyes were really big, and he looked so scared. And I stepped toward him, and I remember thinking, my God, he's paralyzed with fear. That's the thought that went through my mind. And I stepped toward him, and I put my hands out to him, and I said, sweetie, they won't hurt you. They won't hurt you. You'll be okay. They won't hurt you. And it was like he couldn't even hear me. He didn't look at me. His eyes were just like straight ahead. And the light was all around us at that time. And I walked past him and pulled in behind him, stepped in behind him. And just as I stepped in behind him, I could see Jake coming in the other door into the kitchen. And I remember thinking I was so angry because I thought, they've been messing with me my whole life. Don't mess with my kids. But there was nothing I could do. And that's the last thing that I remember. Everything after that was like a dream. It just got like really, like in a dream where things, out of sequence, and I knew I wasn't in my home. I didn't know where I was, but I could hear Danny screaming, and I was just like trying to hit something. I remember it was just really crazy. And then the next thing that I remember was waking up the next morning, waking up in bed, and David was there. And when I woke up, I laid awake for a few minutes, and I thought, it had to have been a dream. Sue, he said, you did get up. He said, and I did speak to you. You were walking around the end of the bed, and he said, I asked you where you were going, and you said that Mally was crying and that you were going downstairs. He said, I tried to get up, and I couldn't move because it was like I was paralyzed, and something was pushing down on me, and everything went black, and I couldn't remember anything after that. And I remember feeling such total, helpless fear.
The birds are eating the bugs in the tree, so it's time to, make it into wood. See the holes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just why the limbs are breaking off, and it's just, I'd rather burn it than just have it rot. What do you want to know, Captain?
Just to know what you're feeling about all this thing happening to Sue and your children.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, it's something so weird. How did you react first when was it the first time you noticed that something was going wrong?
Well, she started having, these experiences she has since she was a child. And then, after the boys were born, there just more and more stuff happening to her. And so we just, and I just learned more about it by listening to her, just like spirituality I've learned by listening and watching what happens. And pretty much that's, that's the way it is. There's not much you can do about it. There's just a lot of educated people that believe, in the UFO phenomenon, and I'm not putting myself as one of the educated, but you have to keep your mind open for everything, and So that's what it is.
Just wanted to say that, I know we're definitely not sharing this to make anyone afraid, because obviously this woman is clearly afraid, but we got to show it how it is, because this is how it is for some people. And they have some, you could see the emotion in her face that, hey, something's really happening. And I like when they film even the normal stuff, because it's just showing you that they're just regular people, and regular people that have something really weird happening to them, weird by our standard definitions of what weird is compared to a normal life. And, you could see that, it really concerns her. It's not just affecting her now, it's affecting the kids, which is also typical, is, like when we speak to some of our other guests who have had children and had their visitations and things like that. Just out of curiosity, just because it's the first time I'm actually seeing this video, has she gotten hypnotherapy or anything like that they're aware of?
Not that I'm. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, this is the only clip. We'll have to research her name, and then
Okay.
maybe we can find out some background and maybe do an update
Okay.
if
Yeah.
enough viewers are interested. But
Yeah.
I agree with you so far, Chris.
Just because a lot of times you can have someone like this, not saying this is the case here, I want to be respectful of her experience, but they could have this and it traumatizes them for a long time, but then they get hypnotherapy and then they get more answers out of what's actually going on, and it's not so bad. Or it could be more like, the Whitley Strieber way, like when we talk with Whitley and, he just eventually got comfortable. And then as he got comfortable, it became easier, to kind of communicate with them. And it wasn't so, as scary as it used to be, like when it first started. Sometimes there's communication from them that, hey, we're actually not going to hurt you, and this is why we're doing this. Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you don't get those answers unless you have hypnotherapy, which is why I brought it up, just in case anyone's also going through something similar and hasn't told anyone yet. That might be something to consider. But if we can find that, and enough viewers are interested, we can definitely share that with you guys.
I agree. Thanks, Chris. Daniel?
Yeah, with just really, I believe him for sure. And I can see the fear, confusion, and just why are we being involved in this, But I was kind of curious of when he was talking about, like, we're going through these strange things, but she talks about spirituality and stuff. I am curious of what it meant by that. Is it just a Christian perspective, or maybe she's gained some semi-awareness of her own, how she's connected and everything, even though being very afraid. And it could, as a father of two, I genuinely feel for her, that raw primal fear with her children, and so wanting them to be safe. And so I think it's a really interesting case. I would love to get more information on, maybe she's been able to find some peace with it, or hasn't, or depends on everyone's journey. But it's very akin to a lot of abduction cases, and people that especially that will go through really traumatic experiences, and then they will also have positive stuff happen, or vice versa. It really depends. But it is a really interesting case, though. So thanks, John, for having us review that one. But John, did you have any more thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it can run pretty deep. I don't think that this is a shallow case at all. I don't think this is. I mean, it could be. To where it's just a fantastical imagination, or she's schizophrenic, or stuff like that. Because, the husband has his experiences of not being able to get up out of the bed. Now, someone might say, well, that's because of the fear that's being imposed upon him about what his wife and children are experiencing, and he doesn't know how to act. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even going to try. I'm glad that this is an older case, because I think that if it were to happen these days, you'd have Mick West, and he'd probably poo-poo this anyway, and Susan Gerbeck would be poo-pooing this, but Dr. Phil would probably be poo-pooing this, because I don't trust Dr. Phil. Go back to that. I don't trust his involvement in any of this. Let's face it, he doesn't have a current license, so he's not a doctor. He's not a practicing doctor at this time. He hasn't had a current license, and I don't know, don't quote me on this, but like 10, 20 years at least. Oh, I mean, Dr. Phil. So what happened when the aliens were on the side of your bed? And do they know who I am? Like I don't care. But to be much more serious about this is you can see psychological, emotional, spiritual. You can't really see the spiritual, but I think that I mean, I can't project what the spiritual is for her, but apparently when the husband said that she's had some kind of awakening, at least of we're not the only intelligent, quote unquote, alphas in the universe. That enough in itself can bring about a profound spiritual understanding. But the fear, and people would be like, well, mama bear syndrome. No, I mean, other cases where fathers are just like Whitley Strieber again, him and Anne tried to keep it from their son for a long period of time, talking about it. They didn't want to talk about it around their young boy, and then come to find out that, the boy was having experiences as well. And this is common, I mean, anybody out there, kids or not, imagine that, you're raising your kids as best as you can, hopefully, and there's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do. And it is now happening to them. That's scary stuff right there. Mm-hmm. Even if, nothing's ever happened to me that I know of. They haven't, there's no physical harm or emotional harm. Obviously it was there, whether the intent was there or not. Psychological harm was there. It's something they have to deal with, whether it was intentional or not. It's still there. And to have the child that you're raising, that you're supposed to protect, and this is happening to them, is profound. And so, how does the adult, the older sibling, deal with something like that? Intent, regardless of the intent, because it's like, okay, I can somehow handle this happening to me, but to the one I'm supposed to protect,
right?
And that's scary.
It can spiral. It can spiral that feeling of feeling helpless because you can't do anything as a protector, as a parent. Like, what are you? Right. So it can be very, very hard for people to go through. And so, right. It's important to be able to talk about it and be able to, for people to be able to express, what they're experiencing, because also it helps them feel like they're not so crazy, and that they maybe have some semblance of control in the situation, as they look back on it. But that's why part of it is, as we talk about our experiences and push against the silence on disclosure, right, of the silence on the phenomenon by the what everyone says of like, oh, you're crazy or whatnot, because that people having these real experiences, people that are going through this trauma, they are genuinely being impacted, and then they're being called crazy, and that is not right. That's not okay. Absolutely not okay.
And if you look at this, I'm sorry, if you look at this family, we didn't meet the sons, and that's fine. Maybe they just didn't want to be on camera. They weren't living at home anymore, et cetera, et cetera. They live out, I mean, no disrespect, pretty much out in the boonies, okay? He's got this, they got this farm. He's making Christmas trees. I mean, I suppose one can argue, well, they're trying to get on the news so we could sell some Christmas trees. I mean, that's ludicrous. Okay, maybe there's a small percentile possibility that that's the reason why this is going on. But, if anybody's ever lived in a small community, I know some people haven't. The last thing you want to do when you're living in a small community is seem like the wacko weirdo. Okay, like, honestly, especially if you got a business, right? Yeah. But even then, so it's like, I don't know how big their community is, but the last thing you want to do is going around, talking about how you're being abducted by aliens. Because
everyone and their mother will know about it in like 2 days. Yeah.
Right. You won't be able to go to your local market and buy toilet paper without everybody pointing their finger and laughing at you like some kind of weird, deranged invasion of the body snatchers. And they're all pointing at you as being the freak in town. So it takes a lot of bravery to talk and be interviewed about this stuff, considering that they don't really seem like they want to be out there in the open discussing it, but they feel compelled to. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but one last thing I wanted to point out is that intent. Let's take it from the entity's perspective, and that is, the hell if I know. The hell if I know what their perspective is. And, and people can disagree with me about this. My fellow co-hosts here, the audience can disagree with me about this. But I think if anybody really tries to nail down what the intent of these entities are in interacting with us, even with experiences of like hybridization or, hey, this is like Betty and Barney Hill kind of stuff, we don't really know what their intent is. All we can do is look at it through the human lens. And when dealing with the phenomena and looking at it through the human lens, we're so closed off on the world around us, right? Like, a lot of people would say, well, this room that John's in is the world around him. Well, it's so much more vast than that. There's things I'm not going to experience that Daniel's going to experience, that Christian's going to experience, just in everyday life, which is magical in and upon itself. That we're even here, that we even live and breathe is magic, right? But it's just like, how do we know what their intent is? We don't. We may get little snippets like, hey, they told us this, or hey, they told us that, but we don't know for sure. And so when we try to nail down facts about why they're visiting us, we're just shooting from the hip. We have no idea. This family here really has no idea. Is it an answer that will ever be given? Probably not. Okay. Or is it an answer we're going to find ourselves? More than likely not. Right. But what it comes down to is how do we grow with it? What effect does it have on us as an end result? You can even have those fearful experiences, but make it turn into a spiritual awareness, whatever fits you. Okay, like, hey, my goodness, we're not alone. Something does exist that is maybe not greater than I, but different than I, right? And that can help one grow. I know with my experiences, with Melissa's experiences, that helped us grow profoundly, right? Even knowing the phenomena my entire life was existing, once you have those experiences, it's just reality changing in a good way. So, I mean, I just, again, I'd like to give all the credit. I wish I could meet this woman and just give her a hug, and the husband too, if they're still alive. I'm not sure, but I feel that empathy for them, and I hope that everything turns out okay. I believe it will. It seems like if she's not seeking therapy, that her painting and just coming to grips with the experiences, whether they're ongoing still or not, has really helped all of them. And there seems like there's good support there, which is rare in certain circumstances like this. So like someone like in divorce and a whole bunch of other negative things. So I'm happy for them, at least, that they were, at the time that this interview was going on, they were together and supportive of each other. And, just like that. And with my final thoughts are this, and I've said it before. If anybody watching here has had experiences, you know that you're not alone. And it could be, not to freak people out, but it could be a chain of family events that you may not be aware of. Because a lot of times these scenarios, these abduction experiences, it didn't just start, it rarely does it start randomly. There's always some kind of like, well, I wouldn't say always, but there seems to be a trend to where this started decades before, or with a family member before, and then it continues with, the younger siblings and onward, and they're being observed for whatever period of time for some reason. Again, I don't think we can nail it down. Maybe we could. Maybe some people claim that they can. I can't. All right. But they just observe and go with it. For what purpose? Again, unsure. But a lot of times abductees and experiencers will be like, well, I don't want to move from my house because I don't know if they're going to find me. As I told Betty and Barney Hill, as I told Betty, if we need to find you again, we will find you. And people can take that as they want, But yeah, if they want to, I say they, but if they want to observe you and they want to continue to interact with you, they will. And as far as stopping it, like, I want it to stop. Hey, whatever makes you feel good. I know I'm going on a rant here, but whatever makes you feel good. I'm going to pray to Jesus. Okay. If that's what makes you feel good, and you think that can change it because you think they're demons and they'll leave you alone. Okay. Hey, whatever works for you. But I'm in the school, if you will. I'm in the thought belief that, well, it could be up to you. I think it's both sides have to agree on it, because it's not like, hey, I'm gonna ride my bicycle faster because this bear is chasing me. It's kind of more like, yeah, again, if you move, they might still follow you because they're not done with you. And to come with grips like that is come to grips with something like that is, because a lot of people, I don't want to experience this ever again, but it keeps happening, and we hear that. It's not, how much is really in our control in our daily lives anyway, right? We always want to have control over everything that's around us as humans. I have to control everything around me, including other humans. And the other humans are like, I don't want to be controlled by John, so I'm going to control this other human, right? And so we're controlling each other because we want to have control, and then the phenomena comes by, and it's like, I don't know if it's thinking this or not. Probably not, but it might be like, you think you're in control. We're in control. And then who knows? There might be something above them that's going, you think you're in control, we're in control. And it just keeps going and going and going, right? Who knows? We don't.
Yeah. And also, it could be an ever evolving relationship. And we've talked about this before, each of our own experiences as of the last few years, we've reached out as much as it's reached out to us. And I know we've initiated that, right? So there is that push and pull. And does that mean that it's going to stay that way for like this lady who's having this experience? Does that mean that it stayed like that? We don't know. There could have been a good chance it evolved her relationship with them. And then, as Whitley talked about, we need to better understand our relationship with them, and then we can co-evolve, right? And be able to make more of a clear relationship. And I think there's some merit to that. So
I agree.
But yeah. Chris, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah. It just was interesting hearing her husband mention the spirituality thing. I wish there was elaboration there, but just for people wondering, and I mentioned this before, but for anyone who's hearing this for the first time, when I was figuring things out and stuff like that, like I always believed that there were other beings and things like that out in the universe, but I figured, hey, I don't work for the government. I'm never going to know. So I stopped, investigating too deeply. Like I would pick up things and research a little bit, but wouldn't go too deep because I'm like, there's a wall that you kind of hit. But then I started investigating near-death experiences, as you guys know, and inevitably it brought me back to the same place. And, like I've mentioned before, near-death experiencers are mentioning a lot of the same things that abductees are mentioning. For the ones that either get hypnotherapy or have some kind of direct communication with certain beings, that's what they're telling them about, like how the universe works, things like that. So when he says spirituality, it's just interesting because he didn't say Christianity. He didn't say like any of that stuff because spirituality is very broad. Like it can mean a lot of things. So it's interesting that with such a weird phenomenon, he mentioned spirituality and stuff. So I'm like kind of wondering what information was gleaned from that, and
If they were country folk too, he wouldn't really.
Yeah.
He wouldn't feel comfortable talking about that at all.
That's a personal thing.
Interesting.
Very open.
Yeah, so it was very interesting that he said that. So I'm like, and to what John was saying, especially with like someone praying, saying they're demons or whatever. And this is a hypothetical situation, but I could totally see this happening. Let's say someone super religious and they go with the fact that, oh, these are demons, right? Hypothetically. And they, or maybe I'm being possessed or something like that. And they try to go to a church and they go from one church to another and they get someone who's an expert or tries to exorcise them, but it doesn't work and it keeps happening. That in itself can cause a chain reaction, whether slow or fast, within someone to realize, well, the church is doing this, they're doing this stuff to me and they're trying to exorcise me and it's not working and these beings keep showing up. It could start the gears turning like, are these actually demons? Like, is this what's actually happening? Or is there something else? Because there's a lot of ways that people move towards self-discovery and learning about what's actually true. And that can happen in a lot of ways. It could be this way. It could be the death of a family member where someone doesn't care about, death or investigating death or near-death experiences, but then they have someone close to them die. Or maybe they had a death experience themselves. Now they start investigating. Now they start looking for answers. Then they start running into stuff. Maybe they run into the UFO stuff or it brings them right back into the UFO stuff like it happened for me. And then you start getting those things coming up. So it's just, like the husband said, you got to keep an open mind because there's just a lot more that we don't fully understand, but I think that we are starting to, and it's becoming more apparent. And you have representatives mentioning like interdimensional beings on TV, which is like, what is the next 30 years going to look like if we're talking about that now? So
yeah,
it's just a food for thought.
Yeah, and keeping an open mind is extremely important too, that we don't become stale or go down a wrong path where we become, the ego takes over and we're like, oh, I'm chosen by the universe to save the world at X, Y, Z, and then because the spiritual psychosis is a real issue nowadays as well, and so that's important to say for people that are experiencers. It's always important to keep open mind and to stay balanced and critical of your own experience, but also open mind at the same time. Yeah, it's a process, but it's extremely important for us to continue to stay in that vein. So yeah, if we don't have any more thoughts, we can end the episode.
Yeah, guys, I just want to say, leave your comments below. Really, if you're interested, or I just we'll probably just do it anyway. Try to research this woman maybe a little bit more, see if there's anything that's online about, maybe try to find some kind of conclusion or some more information at the very least. But for right now, I think it's a compelling story. Again, intent, purpose, no idea. But I feel that there is a reality here, at least to this family, of this actually happening. I tend to believe it, that at least something occurred that is much more than just a psychosis. So share your comments, let us know if you like this kind of format. We can go into more of these kind of old clips, because this stuff is harder to find these days. And again, as we started off with the show, it's kind of important to always is it really the roots? Well, no. But to go back in history and try to apply it to what's going on today. And then you really find out that really not much has changed. Not much has changed. And if anybody doubts that, just watch some old 1940s, these black and white sci-fi UFO movies, and you'll find a lot of the same things that we're asking today, or that we propose today. Oh yeah, electromagnetic fields is how UFOs, fly around. Some movie from 1940 to 1950. Well, it must be electrogravitics, right? And then you're like, holy shit, they were talking about the same thing in 47 that we're talking about in 2025, but we're talking like it's some kind of new theory here, So again, this old stuff's really important. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Daniel, Christian, thanks for joining. I know that I didn't open this episode, but I'll go ahead and close it. Like, share, subscribe, and it's good to be back. It's good to have you back. And we'll see you soon. Bad monkey.